lot of things are going on here today. The end of the week of prayer for Christian unity, the story of Paul's conversion, a gospel passage which fits with Paul's story but is widely accepted as not part of Mark's original text. Let's focus on Paul. After having accompanied many people on their spiritual journeys, I cannot remember the number of times I have heard, "But I don't like Paul. He's always telling you what to do and what not to do. He doesn't like women, and he supports slavery," and so on. It is true that most of the nasty stuff is in the letters which scholars now attribute not to Paul, but to his followers trying to fit Paul's teachings into the household codes of the first century Hellenistic culture in which they lived and in which they hoped to spread the gospel. But we cannot deny the misogynistic texts and their consequences in the church and in culture more broadly. Let us look at a different side of Paul, Paul the mystic. First, where's the horse? In the painting, of course, but not in the scriptures. None of the 3 accounts in Acts of Paul's conversion have him falling off a horse. Surprised? Quote, "On that journey, as I drew near to Damascus, about noon, a great light suddenly shone around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice. Since I could see nothing because of the brightness of the light, I was led by my companions, and he was taken care of, and eventually understood that his mission was to be Christ's witness before all." The conversion, the mission, are rooted in a mystical experience, a great light, a voice. Paul's mysticism is a Christ mysticism, not unlike that of St. Ignatius. A couple of traditional definitions of mysticism. Total self-abandonment in naked faith through an efficacious love of the cross that is one with the very love of the crucified God. That is from Louis Bouillet. Or, in the words of Karl Rahner, a purely non-conceptual experience of transcendence without imagery. Karl Rahner on specific mysticism as opposed to everyday mysticism. Or, as Harvey Egan wrote, an unusually pure and intense psychological experience of our graced orientation to the God of love. Don't those definitions describe Paul's experience? The word mysticism comes, of course, from the Greek word mysterion, meaning something hidden. Paul uses the word mystery 20 times. He talks about baptism being our participation in the death of Christ. For you have died, and your life is hidden in Christ. But we know that hidden presence, as Paul did, through faith. We are invited into Paul's inner life in Philippians. For to me life is Christ, and death is gain. Or in Galatians, I have been crucified with Christ, yet I live, no longer I, but Christ lives in me. Paul was indeed a moralist and a theologian, but also a charismatic preacher who convinced people of the central message that Jesus is risen and of the truly revolutionary consequences. Through faith, you are all children of God in Christ Jesus. For all of you who are baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves in Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free person. There is not male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Are we also convinced of the central message and its revolutionary consequences? This insight of Paul's seems a good place to land on this conclusion of the week of prayer for Christian unity. For just as God's reign is now and not yet, Christian unity is now and not yet. A mystery, as Paul would say. God's wisdom, mysterious, hidden. We certainly don't have to like everything in Paul's letters, but we might like him a bit more when we see him and read him as a person of mystical prayer in love with the risen Christ.